We move on to the next speaker, Dr. Michael Hehenberger of NanoMed in Westport, Connecticut.
I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me back here. The first time I was here was 5 years ago, actually, and I talked about DNA sequencing. Today I will talk also a little bit about DNA sequencing, but more on the global trends in funding and what we can expect from the future. So I'm going to illustrate with 2 examples what happened with funding, in particular government funding, the Human Genome Project, also the current plans for brain research. Then I don't talk about comprehensive China policies. I'm not completely familiar with that. I will just give you a case study, one particular example, but also about US trends and a little bit about the global picture. So I'm only focusing on the R&D piece, the first part. The previous speaker focused very much on what's happening to the right, and there's a long way from research idea to benefit for the patient. The Human Genome Project, you're all familiar with it. It went from 1988 to 2003. But what maybe is not so well known is the distribution of funding. So it started in the United States, and the United States contributed 54% of the funding. The UK, 33%. And then Japan, 7%, France, 3%, Germany, 2%, and China, 1%. And the contributing US government agencies spent a total of $3.8 billion, and was split between the Department of Energy, which really got the idea from the beginning, because, you know, Los Alamos did atomic weapons research, and they thought that's not something for the future, so they tried to move into life sciences. And NIH. And NIH then carried the biggest piece of the funding. And there is a report that was published in 2011 on the economic impact of the Human Genome Project by the Patel Institute in the United States. The objectives of as initially stated, were to identify all protein-coding genes, to determine sequences in human DNA, just human DNA, store everything in databases, transferring the technology to the private sector, but also, and this was a very important point, addressing the ethical, legal, and social issues. And without that, the project would not have been successful. Now, a very interesting number now is what was the return of the investment for the United States, and this is just for the United States, that contributed 54%. So it created 3.8 million jobs. It resulted in close to $800 billion of total economic output, 78 billion of total tax revenue. Now, you have to take those numbers with some grain of salt, because, of course, the report was initiated by the government, and they wanted to have a very favorable outcome. But still, it's quite impressive that compared to direct expenditures of, in 2010, inflation-adjusted dollars of $5.6 billion, every dollar of the investment helped to generate $141. So return on investment of 141. So you would say this is a very worthwhile and beneficial project. And it probably was the biggest life sciences investment ever, in a concerted way initiated. And this is those are the fields of application that resulted from the project, and of course a lot of that is still going on, and further developed, and we will see how much it will have on the future. And we had the same discussion. There was a lot of hype in the beginning. Genomics is going to solve all the diseases, and there was a backlash. It's not happening so quickly, and of course, slowly now we see that it has a lot of benefit for human health, but also for environmental sustainability, food safety, national security, justice. So DNA sequencing is used in many, many ways. Now, this is about the funding picture. Globally, about 200 billion are spent on R&D. This is not just nanomedicine, this is all of life sciences. Across biopharma, food, agro, academic research. The biopharmaceutical industry spends about 100 billion, so it's about 1/2 of it on R&D, but a lot of that is D. And there is a concentration of research funds in the United States. Even, they say, the leading Swiss pharmaceutical company based in Basel, Novartis, has the research headquarters in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But they're also significant. Now, the NIH budget is right now $32 billion. This is a big government budget that's largest in the world. And it actually increased by $2 billion this year. But in today's dollars, it was 35 in 2003. So we have a little bit of a dip, or maybe a plateau. We had a dip, and now we have a kind of a plateau, and the future is uncertain. What's really now interesting is, and of course, there are significant investments in Europe, UK. Sorry, I have now UK separate from the European Union. Japan, China, and so on. But what I found when I did some research on that, because I wrote a book about that, about science, business, and impact of nanomedicine, that what's a strong trend, in particular in the United States, is the increasing private contributions from charities, rich individuals. And when you compare the Human Genome Project to the current BRAIN initiative, Understanding the Brain, actually 1/3 of the BRAIN initiative in the United States is funded privately. So it's 2/3 government. The Human Genome Project was 100% government. Now, this is now 1/3 is by private, by charities, foundations, and so on. And also 30% of the funding for the 50 leading US universities is now provided by what's called science philanthropy. And there is a difference between tax systems in countries. For instance, in the United States, you can deduct charitable contributions from your taxes. In some European countries, I know Sweden has no such deduction because they believe that government knows it best. But in the United States, 30%, and it's a significant portion. And I did some research on the leading institutions, and it's actually quite an interesting history. It started in 1929 with the Jackson Labs, the experts on the mouse, on everything about mouse. We have seen many mice on this conference. Mouse genome, breeding mice, knockout mice, and so on. Then we had the Wellcome Trust, and the Wellcome Trust is a gigantic charitable foundation based in the UK. So the total is $26.4 billion, and the yearly annual funding coming out of the trust is $960 million. And when I showed you before the UK contribution to the Human Genome Project, that was it. It was the Wellcome Trust with a big laboratory outside Cambridge. And that's still going strong and has contributed enormous wealth of knowledge to biology and medicine. Then we have the Howard Hughes, the Hughes Foundation, which also is very important, contributing a lot to medical research. Then we have many, many smaller players, St. Jude, Salk Institute, of course, you know, with polio, and, well, there's the leading British scientist, Francis Crick, went over there. When they did not, when University of Cambridge made the biggest mistake ever of not giving him the chair of genetics. Probably one of the top 3 scientists of the last century who did both the DNA sequencing and the genetic code. And by the way, the Swedish Nobel Committee made a big mistake of only giving him 1 Nobel Prize. But then we come to players like Bill Gates, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which has a trust of $40 billion and gives $3.5 billion a year for charitable purposes. But for some reason, Bill Gates still gets richer every year. But it's the foundation has huge funds, and now Warren Buffett, one of the top rich people in the United States, has also now engaged in that. And that is another movement. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett organizing now the other billionaires in the United States to step up and give a lot of their money to charitable purposes for foundations. There's a lot more here, in particular cancer research, now increasingly brain research. One of the players here is Paul Allen, who was one of the founders of Microsoft. We have Phil Knight of Nike. We have quite a number of very famous rich individuals, and there are lots of those now in the United States, and we can expect a lot. And you see the trend of the curve. You see on the lower left corner, you see the public government funding. It's the upper blue line, and you see it has dipped and it's kind of plateauing now. Then you see the corporate funding, the industrial funding going up. It's mostly the technology companies. This is not only life sciences. So we have a lot of funding for IT and social media and so on and so on. Then we have the charitable contribution is the line at the bottom, and you see it is increasing and really making a strong contribution. Now, let me talk a little bit about China. I have a good friend there who is the chairman of BGI. It started as Beijing Genomics Institute. His name is Huanming Yang, and he was a speaker here 3 years ago. China in '99 had really nothing. They still made an attempt to contribute to the Human Genome Project. They ended up by contributing 1%. And in 2003, it was announced by Bill Clinton and Tony Blair that if the project was successful, it was completed, and so on. And China was acknowledged, so they made a small contribution. Now, that was 2003. And the Human Genome Project spirit is actually has been expressed by Sir John Sulston of the Wellcome Trust in the best way. It's needed by all, it's owned by all, done by all, shared by all. This is a very important statement because everything was shared. Everything is still shared in this project. And the Chinese have accepted that. BGI has many collaborations. They publish what they're doing in the leading journals like Nature and Science. And they have now produced some 200 such leading-edge publications. And Professor Huanming Yang, who has an education from Copenhagen, Denmark, and has spent 3 years in France, in Marseille, so he is very well-traveled and globally knowledgeable. So he has embraced that Human Genome Project spirit, and he has started to organize conferences and in that spirit. He has actually, this year he's organizing number 12. It's called the International Conference for Genomics. And they have been actually, by Nature, ranked number 1 in industrial collaborations, ahead of IBM and Roche. and Samsung. So they have worked on the rice genome. They have worked on connection between genomics, phenomics, phenotyping, imaging. They have done work on cloning, on CRISPR. This is Professor Huan-Ming Yang with a little pig that they have genetically modified to be very nice and small. And next to him is Professor Bo Lund from Aarhus in Denmark, who is heavily engaged in that collaboration. He was actually Huan-Ming Yang's thesis advisor. And you know, Denmark is also famous for the pigs and for the bacon. So they also have, China and BGI, they have embraced the spirit, and they're working hard. They have now 5,000 scientists working in that organization on genomics and all the other omics. They have worked on working on the microbiome. They're not only working on human sequencing, they are trying to cover all living organisms. So they are now a sequencing superpower. Actually, they're #1 in the world now. From 1% to #1. They have also initiated a life sciences, a life gene bank, a national gene bank for China, where they're organizing their conferences. I was there last year. It's impressive. You see this facility with the plateaus, with the terraces. And it's $1 billion investment by the Chinese federal and local government. They're also now working towards sequencing every living thing on the planet. And there was a meeting recently at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. The idea actually was developed by a professor of the University of California, Davis, agriculture. So to sequence every living organism on Earth. It's called the Human Earth Project. And Wellcome Trust already has committed now to participate. So the UK will be in it, the United States not yet. And the other dream and project of BGI is to sequence 1 billion people, focusing on the global health of people. They're active in education. By the way, they're translating my book, which you can find outside. Sorry for this shameless plug. But it's 30% off on online, but here it's even cheaper. One more thing. BGI has a high-performance culture. The president of BGI has climbed Mount Everest. So they're really into teamwork and working hard and conquering challenges. This session is about challenges. So let me just finish with the United States. I'm sure you have heard about the priorities of the Trump administration. It's America first, reducing international collaborations, military budget up. There's no scientist around the president. There's a focus on immigration, enforcing laws, building a wall, removing regulations. But I got some very optimistic views yesterday in the session that apparently the representatives of NIH and FDA who are here, they are actually still optimistic about the future. And they don't think that the president will succeed, that the United States democratic system will be strong enough to withstand his crazy ideas. So there may still be cuts to government science project in 2018 if he gets his way, but we hope that Congress will continue to support our life sciences and nanomedicine initiatives and projects. And you're smiling, so you think so. So this is just I'm running out of time, and I don't need to comment here because this is just what I think what made and this is what I'm ending with. It is a picture of the global R&D investments, and this is from OECD. And you see on top, to the right, you have Israel, Korea, and Japan, who are spending most of their if you look at research investment of a country as a percentage of gross domestic product and so on, and also the number of people involved in R&D jobs, highest on the list are Israel, Korea, and Japan. Then you have the Scandinavian countries, then you have United States, Germany, and then you see China is the big blue circle that's still behind. But it's moving to the right. And if you actually combine the 28 EU countries, then that circle is pretty similar to the US circle. So it's just not combined here in one circle. So my conclusions are that there is some doubt about continued leadership of the US. US still has a huge lead, but there's a question about the future with the current administration. Then EU, now I think when I wrote this, and I wrote the abstract in the CLINAM program, I was more pessimistic, but now we had the French election, and I think things look more positive. But there's one thing that is sure, based on the example of BGI, that China was certainly going to catch up, and they have a government that really believes in science. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I always felt that the slogan, "Make America Great Again," is a concealed insult to Canada and most of Middle and South America. However, we are running out of time and we cannot accept any questions, but Dr. Hehenberger will be here for your discussion. Thank you very much again.